Tom Caltagirone.
Just to let you know how we hooked up this past summer, he had called and said about this pension issue, and I said, why don't we come in and talk? He came into my office and got a hold of the 8, 9, and 10 books that he has here from Harrisburg, both pension funds. And honestly, you know, the 253 members, I dare say, most members probably don't realize that at the end of each year, there are published reports for the Essers, the PSers, and the Commission. 3 actual reports. This guy went through them for 8, 9, and 10, 3 reports each year, and also 13. And then we sat down, and then the first started flying. What has been going on here? Now you got to remember the composition. You know, I went to business school before I went to college, so I know how to read a set of books. And when I graduated from college, I taught school for a year, $5,000, a lot of money back then, right? And then I sold insurance and real estate for 3 years, dealt with some mutual funds, and then also I ran a production line for the firm, one of the firms back home before I got into the legislature. And I had to do the profit and loss statement on that production line every single day when our production was done. So down to the nickel and dime. So I had some feeling, I always liked numbers. So I looked at what Richard's been explaining here, and we're wedded together. He's an arch conservative Republican. I'm a moderate to conservative, or sometimes a little liberal Democrat, depending on the issue. I'm not gonna give you a baloney. But on this particular issue, it's almost a crime what's been going on with our tax dollars, and blaming the employees, whether they're school district or state employees or state legislators. They've been blinded by what's been taking place here. Now you got to remember, I'm one of 253. You can't be an expert in every area. I'm chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. I spend a lot of my time on judicial matters and judiciary issues. We have 20-some committees. No one can be an expert on all things, trust me. If each one of you were a chairman, I would trust you as you would trust me, because that's our word of honor that we live by, usually up there. If somebody lies to you, then you put the X on it. We dealt with over 500 pieces of legislation, more than any other committee and more than most committees combined this past session. So I specialize in focusing on this. However, when Richard pointed this out, and we started digging and digging and digging, so I said, well, how many members serve on this Esser board? Well, it's 11. How many from the legislature? 4 members, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate. 11. Well, who appoints the others? The governor, whoever the governor happens to be. Remember that. Remember the numbers. The majority are appointments, not from the legislature. And this is under Democrats and Republicans. I'm not painting anybody with the brush. I'm just saying under any governor. What's on the other side? The PSers, School District Employees Retirement, 15. How many from the legislature? 4. 2 Dems, 2 Rs, 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate. Okay. Who appoints the others? The governor. Who has the majority? The majority that are appointed by the governors. Interesting. Just follow that. Where do these people come from? All walks of life. Do they really have the background? Now you really start to scratch beneath the veneer. Even members of the General Assembly that Glenn Grell's a good friend of mine. He's on the PSers, Republican from Cumberland County. Dan Frankel, he's on the Essers board, Democrat, chairman of the Democratic Caucus, comes from Allegheny County. And I'm poking at these guys. They're friends, but I want some answers. Do you really understand what's going on? 46% risk investment. And Richard hammered that pretty good. Gold, derivatives, home equities. Real estate, why would you keep investing in risk investments when the bottom was dropping out? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So I talked to Gene DePasquale, and one of the things he said, Tom, he said, let's not get into this before the election. That can cut both ways. And you got to understand, I've been a friend of Tom Corbett for 14 years, and I'm a Democrat. And I was being torn between Wolf and Corbett with this whole thing, and with the election and everything that went on. And I know that Corbett just, didn't play the hand that I think he could have and should have played, but didn't because he's been fighting too much internally within his own party. I mean, part of the problem I see as why he lost, his own leaders in the House and Senate pushed him away. They didn't want to be associated with him. And I think that really caused the problem for him, partially, with his defeat. But to blame the employees on this issue, whether they're school district or state employees, is absolutely inexcusable. The employees have been paying 4.5%, 5.5%, 6.5%, 7.5% of their gross income. They have never skipped a beat. Well, where's the problem? These boards. I don't think they know what they're doing. And then what Richard said, and he called me, he said, Tommy, we got to follow the money. What do you mean? The campaign contributions. Democrats, Republicans, governors, leaders, members of the board. And then I'm thinking, you know what? There's another way around this too. You may not be an elected official. You may not be one of those four or McCord, but suppose you have a vested interest in a certain company or an enterprise, and your friends in New York, the money changers, want to reward you with a contract or some business. Who's going to know? Where's the transparency? One of the things that I was doing today in Harrisburg, and I'll get back to this, I was reviewing with my attorneys in Harrisburg the recommendations that Jack Wagner came up with. Happened to be a Democrat. DePasquale happened to be a Democrat. He was saying, DePasquale, tell me, we don't want to tilt the election one way or the other because this could hurt either one of them when this comes out. But I'm in total agreement with what you and Richard have been doing about this issue. And he's going to do something, just what I don't know. He doesn't have the authority, like the legislature, to make legislation, although he did serve in the legislature, and he served on my committee. He's an attorney by profession, but he's running the Auditor General's office. And he said to me, what we had uncovered this past summer is absolutely true, and it's outrageous what's been taking place. So the recommendations that Richard had mentioned, and which I have in my hand here, we're going to be crafting into legislation. And we're going to try to put some manners on both of these boards to stop the nonsense. And if you're taking any kind of benefit or any kind of money or gifts or whatever from any of these fat cats in New York, you got to report it. And we need to know about it. It needs to be exposed publicly. And if there's any conflicts, then you shouldn't vote on that. You should abstain. There has to be some kind of controls put on these boards, and they have to be open to the sunlight. You know, everything else we do in government, except these two boards, I'm scratching my head, I'm thinking, how are they getting away with all of this stuff? And nobody knows what's going on internally. We have to be open and honest about these investments. And the thing that really disturbed me when we were talking about this summer, the employees didn't create the problem. During the 8 years under Ridge, when the stock market was going like this, I was up there then. I know what happened. Now, you know, the governor prepares the budgets each year, and basically it's rubber stamped by who's ever in the majority, Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't matter. They basically rubber stamp it. For whatever reason, he decided, Ridge, the stock market's so high, we don't have to put any money in. And you got to remember, it's money from the state for the state employees' pension and the school districts. And then the school districts are supposed to put their money in Well, they weren't putting their money in either, in most cases. So I kept saying, well, I wonder what they were doing with that money. Where was it going? They weren't reducing our property taxes. They certainly weren't reducing our state income tax. Where was the money going? Because they weren't putting it in there. And just remember what Richard said. If they would have been putting that money in there religiously, we wouldn't have this problem. And remember what I also said, the employees continued. They have never skipped a beat. They kept putting their money in. But the state reneged, so did the school districts. We would have and should have had about $50 billion in the state employees and between 100 and 150 billion in the school district employees' pension funds. We don't. Now there's a crisis looming. Well, who made the problem? Well, the employees, they're grabbing too much. Really? Don't buy that. Don't buy that for a minute. That just is absolute hogwash. It's the members of these boards, the high management fees, like Richard was saying, we only had a handful that were investing and they were doing pretty good for us in the beginning. You open the floodgates up and all of these money managers and grabbers in New York were feeding off us. You know, grabbing billions and billions of dollars and still are doing it to this day. I think it's outrageous. It needs to be exposed to the public for all that it's worth. Why they continue to do the same thing over and over and over again. Then you follow the money. Who's getting the contributions, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, whether it's a Republican governor or a Democratic governor. What's going on here? That should be stopped. That should be illegal, unethical, and stopped. If you want to serve on any of the boards, you must cut your ties. If you're a business type person that gets appointed, you cannot deal with these firms. One, no elected official should be getting any kind of money from any of those firms if you're serving on those boards as campaign contributions. And don't try to use subterfuge by giving it to the state Republican or the state Democratic committee, circumventing it. We need to put these firewalls up to stop that nonsense. You know, it's all well and good after the fact now, and we're going to be preparing an op-ed piece that's going to be going on to all the newspapers. This is also going to go to every member of the General Assembly, along with, hopefully, the proposals in the legislation to see if we can get some action and movement. And you know, normally what happens up there is, they're like, what, the three monkeys, they give you one of these? Because they don't want it, just like with property tax. You know, I've been on that kick since Sam Rohr. That last summer I called and got 39 Democrats and Republicans, and we got it up to 98, 4 votes short. And I was just telling people here that the day before the vote, I went into my Harrisburg office and saw the list of opponents, and it was like a who's who of everybody, every major state group, whether they be Democrat or Republican, the Chamber of Commerce, the Manufacturers Association, the retailers, all the unions, the farmers organizations, the doctors, the dentists, the lawyers. I thought, oh my God, what a battle we're going to have. And they peeled off of us. Unbelievable. We ended up with, I think it was 59 votes. And you know, I thought, my God, I worked that whole summer to get us up to 98 because normally they trust me. Because if I say something, if I give you my word, I keep it. I'll fall on the sword before I'll back off. And especially on issues just like this. Will anybody listen? I hope with what we're doing here with the different groups, we can start to get a groundswell of support to say, make these changes and do it now. And with that, you know, I'll shut up and answer any questions you may have.